Are you a mom who loves fun, momming, and protecting your family? If you want to meet some of the most amazing people from all over the gun world and beyond, you are in the right place. Tune in for encouragement and sometimes just courage for moms and women just like you, who are curious about shooting but are intimidated or just don't know where to start. Hey, all you tough mothers out there. I have a super interesting guest today, Jessie Moskel, and I don't want to give you any hint as to why he's here, but you are going to be blown away. Jessie is amazing. He has an amazing organization called Recovery Authors. Definitely check that out at recoveryauthors.org. I don't want to ruin the surprise. Jessie, tell me who you are, where you came from, and why are you here?
Wow, that's a big intro. Natalie, thank you so much. By the way, I just wanted to compliment your website messaging for booking this appointment. I absolutely loved. I must have read it 5 or 6 times.
I'm so glad that you enjoyed it.
Man, did you write that or did Mike?
We both did. We had a lot of fun doing that. Yeah, it was. Man,
cool. I knew I had to come on the show because I definitely don't like to kick puppies.
That's true. That is one of those requirements that you cannot kick puppies and be on this show. Like that's prerequisite right there. We'll let a lot of slide, but you know, the kicking puppies thing.
Glancing blows. No. Anyways, my name is Jessie Moskel, and thanks for giving me that plug there. We do a podcast on YouTube around recovery and authoring a new life and a better life. The reason you probably had me on this show today is because 6 years ago, correct? 6 years ago, I met your husband on a podcast. And while you guys have your own proclamations about the episode, I still believe that Mike, your wonderful husband, was far and away the best interviewer I've ever had. So, right back.
Don't tell him, that'll go to his head. I have to keep that to a minimum.
Anyways, Mike and I had a terrific talk about my adventures in Thailand. Going back now, roughly 15 years ago, I went over to teach English in Korea. And for the first year, it was wonderful. And then the second year, I got caught up in an ecstasy drug ring in Southeast Asia. That was kind of crazy for a little while, a bit different from teaching 9 and 10-year-olds English. But when, as you know from watching movies, the bad guy always gets caught in the end. So I got locked up in some of the toughest prisons in Asia, I'd say, except that they don't kill foreigners lately. So that was a good news when that happened to me. I got locked up in Thailand, spent a number of years in Bangkok prison. And so I guess that answers your question. That's where I come from.
Yeah. And that, which is like a crazy story in itself. But the way that you got out of that prison is one of the most amazing stories that I've ever heard. And I think it speaks to so many of us on how we can transform our lives and control what we can control. And I just really want to share that story with the people that are listening.
Yeah, that was a great intro, Natalie. The thing that makes the story, by the way, which is on National Geographic now.
Whoa, you serious?
Yeah, they published, we shot a documentary end of 2019. So that came out just a year and a half ago.
I will be including whatever links to get to that story in your show notes page. So for those of you listening, definitely check out that page and watch the story.
Yeah, they actually tell it a lot better than I do, but I'll give it a shot. But no, what made the trip to Thai prison so valuable was that I'd really kind of lived one sort of life, and it came to a really horrific end, because when I went to prison, they charged me with a life sentence, a death sentence, and a 4-year sentence. So I had 2 lifetimes, and potentially I could be sentenced to die. As I said earlier, I'm a foreigner, so likelihood was low on that, but they don't let you go home if they don't kill you. They just keep you forever. So I was
like, I don't know
facing
which is worse.
Yeah, right. Please kill me. Um, so faced with that situation, I mean, what do you do? And I talk to a lot of people who are they're always aghast. Like, I can never do that. But the fact of the matter is, like, we deal with these types of situations all the time in life, whether it be cancer or, you know, a friend suffering from severe depression. I mean, any number of things. A child falls ill or dies. I mean, these are the situations that reveal ourselves to one another.
Absolutely. So, like, I mean, I'm guessing that when you were there, you just kind of hit rock bottom. Like, how am I ever going to change this circumstance? That seems like I've been in some
Right.
hopeless situations, you know, especially like raising a small boy when like he makes like this just colossal mess. And I just feel like, oh my God, I'm never going to recover from this. But that situation is
That's
incredibly
awesome.
difficult. So, like, what was your mindset when you got there? Was it like immediately like, I have got to get out of here? Or was it like, what was that like transition for you?
Okay, so to take myself back there, I'd been on the run for a long time. So to be honest, when I got arrested, there was a great sense of relief because I didn't have to look over my shoulder anymore, and I didn't have to, you know, just angle on where I was safe to go. And, I, you know, I just wasn't running anymore. So I definitely hit my head on the ground and, you know, slept on the ground. It was very, it had a sense of finality to it. Like, this is where you're going to be the rest of your life. But when I was in college, I studied Stephen Covey, and he has this thing where you have two spears, one small circle and one larger circle holding the smaller circle. And within the smaller circle are the things that we can control. And a lot of people, especially today, it seems, are focused on things they can't control, like what the media is doing or what the politicians are doing or the police or defunding or funding. And all these things, they aren't things I can directly control. Maybe I can in some small way, but the things that I can control are in the smaller sphere. And by exclusively focusing all of my energies on those things, I was able to literally step over a prison wall and walk away from a death sentence in just under 6 years.
Which is like, I just love that because I talk to a lot of people who have like a ton of fear and anxiety and stress about like all these other things that are going on in their life. And it's like, there's nothing you can do about that. But the things that you can do, like you're stepping over dollars to pick up dimes, right? Like they're sacrificing their mental security and their health, worrying about things that they cannot possibly influence in a meaningful way.
And at the same time, Natalie, I want to express that I'm susceptible to that all the time too. Like, it's super cool that I got out of prison and, you know, was able to turn my life around and do all kinds of fun things and help a lot of people. But I still fall into these traps sometimes. And so it's just, there's like, you've got to be extra vigilant all the time to be focused on things that I can control. I wanted to share recently, my girlfriend and I, we've been talking a lot about worry, because some of the people in our family tend to worry, and they use the word worry a lot. And so what do you know? It perpetuates. And I can't quote the original author, but the quote I'm thinking of goes something like, worry is what you do when you're not prepared.
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah. So yeah, being prepared is 100% like a lot of that. When you have, you know, when you deal with like your life in general, when you have like your kids or like you're traveling, or even if you're trying to protect yourself, like having a plan is the baseline, right? Like practicing that plan is the second step, but like just having one is like the first thing that you should do. I think a lot of people panic because they never even like think about all the things that could happen. And then when it does, they're just like, I didn't even see this coming. And it's like, well, you know, the rest of us did.
Very well said.
So and I love this story. So I'm just going to like grab it out of you. When you were in there, you did not speak Thai, right? Like you didn't speak the language, you didn't like write anything. So how were you able to work your way out of the prison in 6 years? Like what was the first step that you took?
So learning the Thai language was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. Thanks for bringing that up. I haven't thought about that in a minute, but learning to think was a big part of what I did in prison. Learning how to think, learning better methods and strategies, and reading lots, probably over 1,000 books while I was there. But learning to think was great, and then learning to think in a second language was even better, because it twisted my small brain around in ways that I never anticipated. So it kind of opened up a new world for me, having that language, being able to speak to the guards. And it happened very early. I was so lucky. There was this one guard, he came up to me, and he only knew maybe 3 dozen words of English, but he said, you need to learn our language. You're going to be here a long time. So if you want respect, if you want comfort, if you want safety, you have to speak the language. And I took him to heart, and I learned it. So, and that changed everything. If I hadn't done that, I don't think I'd be here today.
Which is I can't imagine learning another language in that kind of circumstance, like without, training and classes.
It was the best thing. Yeah, I mean, everybody around me was speaking it, and it was the only thing really. I mean, if you're inside a prison, you can't think about anything else except how stuck you are, and everyone around you has the same brainwaves going through. So it's absolutely a horrible thing, in terms of feeling the longevity of just an hour or a day. But if you've got something to do like that that's super taxing on your brain, and you could just lose yourself, oh man, I mean, that's like being in flow all day for me. That was a lifesaver. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna kill myself, but I had that.
I mean, that's got to be, so Thai prison's not exactly like US prisons. Like, I would imagine there is not like cable TV, healthy food, order. Like, it's pretty much you're here and maybe you die, maybe you don't. So distraction from that, I'm sure, was like huge. But like, how did you actually learn it? Like, did you find somebody there that like communicated, like, or was it just immersion and just picking things up? Because I feel like that's a huge skill. I just have no idea how you did that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll toot my own horn a little bit here. The Thai, Japanese, and I want to say Chinese. Those are the 3 hardest languages in the world. They're all tonal. We Westerners can't speak them very well because there would be multiple meanings for a single word. But yeah, the answer to your question is yes. It was all of the above. It was everything. My mother, God bless her, she found out and came over and visited me 3 times in 5 years. But in that first year, once I made the commitment to learn the language and become fluent, she went online. I guess Amazon was just getting big back then, and found a 3-volume set of books from Arkansas University. And I guess it was 3 years worth of language books, but I had those sent over. And I mean, if you stop to think about it, sure, it's mostly criminals in a prison, but there's also some people plucked from high society that are falling afar from whatever politician they pissed off. Or, there's a few guys in there with some real knowledge. I had a roommate that was a doctor, and you experience a lot of educated people, to be honest, in prison. So I was able to draw on a wealth of information, and I was really lucky just in the places I was put.
That's really cool. So you picked up the language, you kind of connected with people within that prison that were like resources for you. And then your mom got you like books on how to like write Thai.
Yeah.
And you started learning how to write Thai. Now, was like reading and writing, was that just something like as a distraction, or did you have like a goal in mind as far as like, I'm like trying to do something?
Now I know where Mike got his interviewing skills. Now I know. Mike, you poser. Nah, nah. We knew it wasn't you. No, that's, yeah, exactly. Um, I totally blanked on the question.
So what was your goal with like reading and writing in Thai? Like obviously you're going to be there for a long time, but did you have like
Yeah.
when you started to read and write, were you like, I'm going to get out of here? Or is like, this is just something I'm going to do to pass my time?
So when I got there, I was 31 years old, and it was obvious to me that I was going to be there for 20, 30, 40 years. So I figured my immediate goal is I need to be able to operate. Everybody has a hustle in prison. It's just like the real world. It's just behind a wall. There's, people are conducting business, and, there's a whole economy. And before I could speak, there'd be maybe 3 to 5 people, foreigners in the building. So there's 500 or 700 people, and I can talk to 3 of them. Once I learn Thai, I can talk to all 703 of them. And so there's this story I told myself, one of which was, I'm a journalist. I'm not really in prison. I'm just undercover. And I want to go in here and collect all these stories from all these incredible people. A lot of those guys were millionaires. There's scummy people in there, no doubt, but they all had an incredibly interesting backstory. They all had incredible things that I was able to learn and glean. One of which is, don't get old and not have any children. So, I'm still benefiting from their wisdom and their knowledge. And so, yeah, the goal immediately was to learn, to grow, to make the experience as incredible as it could possibly be, because it's already bad. That's my starting point. I can raise the bar a little bit from there. But past that, it was also to do the thing which ultimately led to my freedom. Is this a good commercial break time?
Never.
Drop the cliffhanger and say, we'll be back.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, all right, well, that's it. See you guys later. So,
Do you have any
okay.
promo?
Honestly, like that, the way that you got out is just one of the most like mind-blowing stories to me ever. Cause I think a lot of us give up when we have like the first bit of hesitation or resistance or fear. You did not do that. You were incredibly persistent, and you, he annoyed his way out of prison. That's how you do it, folks. If you are an international drug smuggler or dealer and you end up in a Thai prison, the way to get out is annoy everybody. You may end up dead, but on the good side, you could get out. So it's 50-50. So, okay. So who did you annoy, and how long did it take you to annoy him to get out?
So this is actually going to turn into a plug, but when I went over to London and shot this Nat Geographic special, the way they tell this part of the story, it amazed even me. So definitely check that out. But there was a contact from the embassy in Bangkok, an American, but a Thai national, excuse me, the American embassy, but a Thai national. And his name was Noom. And I pissed him off in the first couple of visits because I was at wit's end, and I really, they hadn't come by to visit, and I was super upset about it. And I let them know. And when you're in a position like that, you don't have a lot of friends, you don't have a lot of people who even can access you at the prison. The embassy was really the only people that could get in there easily. And I annoyed the guy, so he basically stopped coming to see us. And after that, I had to mend a fence. So month in, month out, I would write one letter to Noom in Thai. And these letters were, like, Swadee Cup, Bingai Bang, Pun. Sincerely, Jessie, right? So it's like very short. And then after a year, it got to be a paragraph or 2. And then by year 4, we're talking like 50 letters later, 4 years, Noom shows up at the prison.
Wow.
and on his own comes in, sits down in the, we're basically talking to each other through glass. It's just the same. Um, Picks up the phone and says, "You made so many mistakes in my language." And he puts it up on the screen. He said, "Look at this," and it was covered with red ink because he had made all the corrections like a teacher would. So it took me back to Korea where the whole thing started.
Oh my gosh. So he's like literally doing grammatical corrections on your like your pleas for freedom. He's like, well, he didn't do that. Like that is the government in a nutshell. So apparently not just in the US, it's worldwide, people. Like, I'm sorry, you misspelled give me my freedom, so we're going to have to decline. So okay. So he came in to tell you you had done many grammatical errors, and then how did that go like further?
Well, it was a joke.
Well,
And
obviously.
right. So I looked at him, and then we both started laughing, and all the animosity just washed away in that moment.
Oh, that's amazing.
We just talked. We became friends after that. We're still in touch on Facebook now.
That's great.
He's kind of a co-star, so it was a pretty unexpected deal for him, at the embassy to become a co-star. I need to mention too, it was the first, maybe the second or third time I saw those guys. They came in and they said, "Hey, Jessie, there's this new show on TV. It's called Locked Up Abroad. When you get out, you should be on." That was in the first season, like 13, 14 years ago.
That show freaked me out traveling through Southeast Asia, but I'll touch on that later. But so crazy experience. But okay, so I was living in Singapore about, I don't know, it was like 15, 14 years ago, and went over to Thailand for a weekend. And I figured I was living on the equator. It was totally fine. Like I had, built up kind of a base tan, was used to like the sun, ended up taking a boat from Phuket to the Phi Phi Islands. And I didn't know that this boat wouldn't have shade. And I didn't think to bring sunblock. And it's an hour, 45-minute boat ride. So by the time I got there, I was like crispy fried, like just purple. And I was so sunburned, I couldn't bend my arms or legs. My skin was swollen, like my nose, like it was so burned, like the sweat would stay underneath the skin. So it was extremely painful. And as you know, in Thailand, you can go to like the pharmacy and they're like, okay, here's some numbing cream and here's some pain medication and all this other stuff. Cause I was in like, just the wind was agony. And I ended up flying back to Singapore, like a week later, but I still had all of these medications in my bag. But Thailand doesn't like write you prescriptions, like it's just some random dude in like a pharmacy that handed these to you. And, Singapore has a no tolerance policy on drugs, and it's punishable by death. Yes. And so here I am, like, I didn't even think about it until I get like that, immigration or not immigration, customs form. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what if these things are in my purse and they find them? Like, how am I going to explain it? And I'm like, where do I get rid of them? And I'm just like starting to like panic as I'm like heading up to like this customs line, and I'm just like sweating bullets. And my friend who came with me was like, I'm going in that line. See you later. Like, I don't blame you. It's okay. So here I am just like sweating profusely, like trying to like figure out a way out of this situation. Unfortunately, like they did not care, nor did they, apparently like whatever pain medication they gave me was not a big deal, but like seriously panicking because I had watched those shows and I was born in Singapore. So I know like, they had actually had some people come in that were caught trafficking and they were hung a week later. And so I was just a little panicked. So yeah, fun little story about Locked Up Abroad and panic attacks.
That's a serious one right there. Wow. Yeah. See, you're a level beyond me. I've never done any muling. That's what they call it. You're bringing drugs across international borders.
Oh my goodness. It was terrifying. So, okay. So you were talking to this guy in prison and you built this relationship. And so how was he able to influence you, like getting out? Like how did that all transpire? Hey, all you tough mothers. Tune in for the next episode to find out how Jessie managed to get out of a Thai prison and back into the United States. Great job. You made it to the end. You are one tough mother. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to support the work that we do and keep the good lovin' coming, subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you're listening. What's that? You're one of those crazy mother followers that wants more of this nonsense? You got it. Subscribe to the Moms Love Guns YouTube channel, follow us at Moms Love Guns on Instagram, and join our free private Facebook group to connect with other women just like you in an encouraging and non-judgmental community. If you want to share even more love, share your new favorite community with a friend or all of your friends, maybe even a few enemies, just to be safe. Get out there, overcome your fears, be not afraid. You have got this.